It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, June 21st. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content is wondering what we can learn from what Danny Briere said prior to the draft.
Learn or break down?
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Ever dreamed of becoming an NHL GM and managing your own hockey franchise? You can now with Ultimate Hockey GM. It's completely free, and Locked On listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On NHL in the game store. To download the game, just visit hockeygm.app or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate Hockey GM, start your dynasty today. You can find our show over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get the latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, it was a busy day around the NHL on Wednesday. We talked on yesterday's show about one of the early deals in the day, as it turned out, with the Markstrom trade. It feels like people are getting a little itchy as we are getting closer to the draft, and the Stanley Cup final is not over, but who cares? Let's just do stuff.
There's no question they're getting itchy. Like that's a guarantee. Like I'm not getting itchy because I'm like up to my neck in work for the draft. I love it. Don't get me wrong, but I get why people might be. Yes.
So we had the Pierre-Luc Dubois, Darcy Kuemper trade, which was 1-for-1. We love those 1-for-1 trades.
Oh yeah.
It's much easier to figure out who won the trade later on. But it seems like it was like an unfortunate cap hit for an unfortunate cap hit situation.
Well, I think it's more than that. So I don't think Darcy Kuemper is at the top of his game.
Yeah.
I think he's more of a middle of the road goalie right now. I think the Capitals, what they did was they got a guy who they could buy out with that third of the contract buyout because of his age, or they can keep him and use him as their number one center with Ovechkin. And I think they're going to sit him down, and I think they're going to give him that option, and I think he's going to play for them, and I think he's going to have a good year. And I think this is a better trade for Washington because I think they could recoup PLD into becoming the player he was rather than the other side trying to revive Darcy Kuemper. So that's my feeling on it.
Yeah, I get that. And it's just been interesting with Pierre-Luc Dubois in that he just hasn't seemed to fit anywhere. And this is like becoming a pattern now. And it's just, I'm wondering, will it be different this time around?
Well, I can't say for sure. I think some of those things were contract related, and I know one of them was the way they were playing him. But you hope that he's maturing at this point, and then that it stops. And if it stops, Washington really, I'm telling you, this is something where Washington could really start taking a tumble the next couple of years, but not if they can keep replenishing like with Miroshnichenko and getting a guy like PLD as a number one center out of pretty much nowhere. That's one way of getting you to not dip down into the dregs,
So the rumors started around the Flyers in Ottawa as part of all of this activity around the NHL. And, is it Konechny going to Ottawa so the Flyers can move up? Is it Chychrun coming to the Flyers because that just seems to be on the table in perpetuity these days? I don't think it's either, but that being said, Danny Briere was very quick to put a quash on all of that in his pre-draft presser, which take it with a giant pile of salt, right?
Yeah, that's a massive pile. But I'll say this. I could see Chychrun being talked about before the draft because his time's almost up there and they never came to any kind of contract agreement. So he's going to go somewhere. So you have that, and you got the Flyers with, a pretty good first round pick and some players that they're probably willing to give up. Now, me personally, I'd steer clear of any of these Ottawa rumors, trade, whatever. I don't want any of their defensemen. I rather things stay the same. And I say that because there's a reason like teams are going to trade you some of these guys. Now, Chychrun, sure, he for the first time in his career played 82 games this year. Okay. I'm not, do I know he's going to do that every year? No, he's probably not based on his history. He's a really good player, don't get me wrong. But again, the timeline really, and I don't care what their age is. Chychrun has a lot of mileage. A lot of their defensemen have a lot of mileage. So whoever it might be, there's mileage there. It doesn't matter the age. I always try and tell people, like, remember how we talked about Jeff Skinner recently, and there's all kinds of rumors about him, right? So yeah, age doesn't matter so much to me. It's where they've been, how they played. And so if I'm the Flyers, I steer clear of it. I don't mind, having the talk, but even if it's as low as Scott Lawton and the first, I'm not doing it because, again, let's say it's Chychrun. It could be someone else, but let's say it's Chychrun. Losing Lawton's not going to kill him. It'll hurt him in the room, but it won't kill him.
Yeah.
They'll figure that out. That first is still a key first. They're not really done as far as what they should be doing, compiling what you hope is a future core, because they don't really have that yet. They're starting to build it. And the other part is right now, when I look at it, I don't think it's the right time still to do it. And so I combine all those things and I'm like, I wouldn't do it because the Flyers are going to get a good player that could still be a really good core player.
Yeah, I personally don't think that Danny Briere would do anything to lose a draft pick in this first round. I think it's possible that there's a deal out there where they trade picks with somebody. So maybe they move down a little bit, maybe they move up a little bit, and it depends on where it is. But the Flyers are going to have 2 picks in the first round, no matter what. And that
Well, that's why I
is
think they
the
could
impression I
trade
got
one of
from
them.
Danny.
I know.
Right?
But that's why I think they could trade one of them. I think there'll be pressure from the other groups, other people in the group, if you know who I mean, trying to get a big physical defenseman who could score. And I think, that's why the conversation comes up in the first place. And I think there would be a lot of discussion. And the problem is to make this trade even close to worthwhile means they're going to have to sign Chychrun too. So then you might be talking about like a sign and trade with Ottawa where all of a sudden Chychrun's getting 8 years. I can't give him 8 years.
No.
He's going to be hurt in 4 or 5. So that's,
Right.
that's the other part of that. And they're already in cap trouble anyhow. This is only going to further their cap trouble, even though, yes, they'll be getting better on the ice for sure.
Yeah, all of this is why I firmly believe that the Flyers will pick twice in the first round. Whether it's at 12 and 32 remains to be seen, but
I
I
think
think they're picking
I think you're right.
I think they're no matter what happens, they're picking twice in the first round because that is all they've been talking about is these drafts. Danny mentioned it again that last year's draft, this year's draft, and next year's draft were everything about this rebuild. And they've been working so hard to get these assets to pick, like for them to give up one of those top picks seems counter to that.
Well, I mean, let's just say this. Plans do change. And I would also say that while that all sounds good, and even if Danny really kind of sticks to his guns, there may be a point where they look at it and say, but we probably should do this. And they could do it. And look,
Well, I
you
certainly
can't,
hope that's not for Chychrun because not worth it, in my opinion.
but I'm just saying, like it's not about for the fans. It could be about getting more season tickets, though. It could be that's a discussion that could come up. Hey, we're actually better than last year. Next year, this coming season, we'll get more people in the stands because they don't sell out games. And so, finances could be an issue that way. It has been with other organizations. It's hard. The GM could stand strong, but it doesn't always end there. It's supposed to, but it doesn't always, especially in a corporation.
I don't know. I just it's a gut feeling and it's a
Yeah.
based on the evidence presented feeling. too, that I think that they're using every opportunity to take the time while they're in a rebuild and have that luxury to take advantage of it and get the prospects and look toward the future and not look too much to now, as much as possible. So that's where I stand now. Next year's draft, that's a question, but I think this year's draft they're picking two in the first
I'll
round.
say this: if
no
I
matter
find out about it, I'm going to tell you last
what. Okay,
because you're not going to
that's
have a good
fine.
day. It's not going to be a good day for you.
Listen, if it's a different team, if it's a different deal that's not Chychrun, I'll listen.
No,
I
no.
just,
If it's Chychrun, I'm
you know,
telling you last. If it's somebody else, I'm not.
okay. Okay. All
That's what I'm
right.
saying.
Well, Danny Briere had a lot more to say in his press conference yesterday that may give us some hints as to what to expect on draft day, and talked about some other stuff. We will get to all of that coming up next.
Hey, Locked On Flyers fans. I want to take a moment to bring up one of our partners, the mobile game Ultimate Hockey GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NHL GM and managing your hockey franchise? Do you think you could run the Flyers better than Danny Briere? We're kind of talking about that now. Well, your dream can come true, and this game is most definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the seasons, and lead it to glory. Hire the right coaches and staff, players, trades, or picks. Navigate through free agency and the draft, all in a challenging and realistic game mode. As a Flyers fan, you know there's no offseason. GMs are constantly making moves at every point of the year to improve their team's chances, and that's why I think you're going to love this game. Ultimate Hockey GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. By the way, Locked On Network listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On NHL in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit hockeygm.app. That's hockeygm.app, or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate Hockey GM, start your dynasty today.
Next week on the show, it's draft week, so we're going to have a ton of content around that, of course, and anything else that will come up next week as we expected. Kind of what's already started to start happening early next week, and we'll see how all of that plays out as well. We'll have a new poll on Monday, which we'll get to the results of later in today's show.
We'll see how bloodshot my eyes are, too.
We are talking Danny Briere and his pre-draft presser here. And I think, first off, it's interesting that Brent Flahr wasn't there, because I know Brent usually does the post-draft presser, but to not have him there as a support in a lot of ways, or as a crutch in a lot of ways, I think was good for Danny Briere, because he had to handle all of this on his own, but also he kind of had the luxury of not having like the details guy there to have to clarify or reveal anything that they didn't want to reveal, right?
So you're saying without Brent there, he could keep it very bland.
Not bland, just simple.
Okay, well, to me, that's bland. But okay, I get it. I thought it was odd, and I still think it was a little odd, but stuff happens, so what are you going to do?
Yeah, maybe they're busy working and trying to figure out what Columbus is going to do, because according to Briere, they don't know what Columbus is going to do with that second round pick. We've made the assumption that Columbus is going to keep it. But as Danny Briere pointed out, it's a new GM in Don Waddell. So who knows? Things could be different than we expected. And they're going to prepare as if they have the pick, but assume that they're not, and be ready for both circumstances, which is what you have to do in this scenario.
It is what you have to do.
So he was asked about his draft philosophy and what he looks for. And the answer he came up with first was diversity. And I think that's something we've been talking about a lot, that, you know, you really want to look to your draft class to provide a diverse set of skills, a set of skating ability, hockey sense, position, all of that, you know, you tend to go best player available in the first round, maybe the second round, but then you start looking at position a little bit more as you go down, and that made a ton of sense.
Yeah, he's making sense, because what he's basically telling you is, like, best player available is just a buzzword. It really is. It's a fan buzzword. It's the best player available for your team. your best player available and my best player available, probably different.
Right. And he alluded to that because, he said, "Oh, I'm not going to go for position, but if all things being equal, a center is something we need. So if we see a defenseman and a center who are basically equal on the table, we're going to take the center because that's an organizational need."
Listen, if I were building odds here, the odds of them taking a center and a defenseman are 99.9%. We pretty much said it on this show. We
Yep.
pretty much drafted it that way. And by the way, Stiga can play center if he need be. So he never know what he's going to be. But the point is, yeah, I think that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think that he was really, uh, I don't know if forthcoming is the right word, but realistic, let's say, about the salary cap because we've talked about it. We know where the team is with the salary cap, that they're in a really big crunch, but that they planned it that way given what they had to deal with, and they knew they were going to be in this scenario. So it's not unexpected for them, and that they're not going to do much in free agency because they just don't have the room, and that's okay.
Right. That means they're not going to pick up Eric Johnson, right? They're not going to sign him again, right?
Presumably. But
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, there was a pause
you know what
there.
happens when you assume.
I
So
know. Yeah, I don't buy it. We'll see what happens with that.
yeah, but I
But
mean
it's not doing a
true
lot,
though.
even if they do him. That's true. Even
Yeah,
if they get him, it's
yeah,
not a lot.
yeah. It's not like they're gonna go for any top free agents. It's not like they're gonna sign 6 free agents. It's gonna be 1, maybe 2.
But GMs like to parse words, and just because he's not going to be a player in free agency doesn't mean he's not going to be a player in a trade. That's
Yes, that
different.
is true. That is very true. And he said he's going to keep listening on everything, which he's been doing. He'll take any phone call with
Right.
any proposal and
All right.
he'll
Well, I'm going to call
listen.
him. I'm going to call him after the
Yeah.
show.
Well, you're not the GM of an NHL team, so I don't know if
No.
you'd take
Can
that
I
call.
pretend? Maybe I could pretend to
But
be one.
listen, I think it would be a little more shocking if I called because given that there are currently no women GMs, which bothers me a lot. Anyway, there are, those considerations. And I also thought it was interesting. They were asked about cap friendly, and he's like, now we have our own system. It doesn't matter.
That's good. I mean, I think every team's going to say that. The only thing I will tell you is, does every team have a system that's as good as cap friendly? Probably not. And they're not going to tell you that. And you as a fan just have to hope. Like, that's just the reality. Otherwise, Washington wouldn't have bought it. And Washington can't be the only team that, if had a chance, would have bid on it. You know what I mean? Like, Washington was just smarter than everybody.
Yeah, in some ways,
Yes.
which is exceedingly frustrating for me personally. But that being said, I think that he did seem to at least be realistic about their cap situation, and that this has all been accounted for, and don't worry about it. This year is not a big deal anyway. Next summer it'll ease up a little bit. And the fact that he said that was interesting to me, which means that he didn't say that he wasn't going to take on any more dead cap, but that sort of said that. And I'm just wonder what that means in the grand scheme.
If they could figure it out, they're going to take it. That's what it tells me. If it's short term. If it's short term.
I don't know.
I'm just telling you. If it's short term.
Short term, yeah.
Yeah, short term dead cap, they're still going to take it.
Yeah, because I don't think they foresee needing or wanting to sign any big free agents for another 2 years. So as long as it clears up in 2 years, I think they're going to be okay.
Correct.
So if it's like a 1 year situation,
going up every year is going to help clear it up too.
Yes, that is also true. I think the other interesting part, related to the Michkov situation is that I keep calling it a situation, but it's really not a situation. It's just circumstance. But I think that, he's been consistent in saying we don't expect him for 2 more years. If things change, that's great. We'll take him.
He was going to say that even if he's here tomorrow.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
That's a reality.
Exactly. So he's not, I think before he was more willing to put a date on it and say, we'll know by the end of June. And now he's like, it is what it is, and
Yeah.
things could change tomorrow, and things could not change at all, and that's fine. And like, let's put a stamp on that, put a pin on that for the time being. But he was asked about the draft related to, does that change his approach in drafting a Russian, given what's gone on with Michkov and with Fedotov. And I thought that part was interesting as well, and that it would really have to make sense in terms of that particular pick at that particular time, given everything. And, you know, in some ways, it's better to have more time to let them develop elsewhere. And I just thought that whole discussion was interesting.
I'll tell you what it tells me. What it tells me is he's like, there's a lot of Michigas and getting a Russian defenseman. If you don't know what Michigas is, just look it up on Google. But the point is, it doesn't sound like they're taking another Russian in the first round.
Yes, yeah, yes and no. I think if it was like the perfect player, perfect scenario situation where it seems like they have no other choice and they look at their board and nobody comes close, I think that's the circumstance where they'll take a Russian.
Yeah, I'm just saying they're
at
not
this
leaning
point.
towards it. Like there are going to be Russians available. We've talked about some of them on this show. When they pick, they're not going to pick it. Not at 12. Definitely not at 12 and probably not at 32. After that,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, I think that's more what they're
What they're
gonna
saying,
end
yeah.
up doing here. But in terms of Michkov, that he has to develop no matter where that is. And so if
Correct.
he's developing in the KHL,
That's fine.
that's fine.
There's nothing wrong with
There's
that.
yeah, because he would have to develop here. And if that means time in the minors, it means time in the minors. And is that gonna benefit him
Yeah, I
coming
mean,
over?
there certainly would be a benefit, but there's also a thought. You put him in the minors, he's a Russian. He doesn't, he does speak English. Is he going to be a target from some of the other teams, goonish players, should I say? And, they may want to stay clear of that. And I get it.
Yeah, I think so too. And so, he tried to compare the timeline of Michkov to the timeline of Bonk and say that nobody is complaining about Bonk being on a longer development path or not going to be here for 2 to 3 years. And in some respects, he's right that
Hmm.
nobody is complaining or nobody is saying what's wrong, that Bonk won't come here sooner. Well, he needs time to develop and he's on a development path. And the same thing is true for Michkov.
Yeah. And Bonk's restricted by age too. So that's another
Well, there
thing.
is that.
But not in 2 years, the year after he can come over and play wherever. But I think they're doing the right thing and nobody should question it as far as that goes.
Yeah, but it seems like they're ready for the draft, no matter what
They
the
better be. I
circumstances
mean,
are.
listen, I just did
So,
an hour-long mock draft. If I'm ready, they better be. I mean,
well, I think he seemed pretty calm and
yeah,
pretty, focused
yeah,
about it and thoughtful about it too. And, obviously he has to hide strategy. He has
of
to
course.
be cagey about some answers, and he was, no question there. But it also, just from his demeanor and from the way he was answering questions, it seems like they're ready, they're prepared, and they have a plan, and we'll see if it works.
You know, as you know, though, with drafts, everybody has a plan until like something bizarre happens. And then sometimes the plan goes out the window. Sometimes in the middle of the draft, your board's getting thin. Sometimes there's one or more multiple players that are available at the spot that you didn't think they were going to be available. Now the person that you thought you were going to take, you may not take. And then you see what happened like with the Devils, and they start breaking out the binder and they start talking to all the scouts huddle up with the GM and they start trying to get that consensus immediately within the 5 minutes, I think, that you get for the first round. Yeah, I think there's still always things that you can't prepare for, but you're
Yeah,
prepared otherwise, and I think they are.
I think so. All right. We will get to the poll results from this week about the Flyers' best draft of the last 20 years coming up next. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home those huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers. So our question to you all this week was, which Flyers draft class of the last 20 years was the best overall? And to let us know if we missed a particular class or your reasoning for the years selected. And I have to say, I was not surprised by which year got the most, which was 2015. It was by how much that surprised me. I think I was expecting a little bit more evenly distributed answers. And 2015, of course, was Ivan Provorov, Travis Konechny, Felix Sandstrom, Ivan Fedotov was in that one as well, with 57% of the vote. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I give them credit. I give them a slow clap. They thought about it the same way I do. Not everybody has the same value system, but I want more players playing more games rather than even just one Hall of Famer or potential Hall of Famer and nothing else. So yeah, that's, to me, they got it right.
Yeah, it is interesting because it's how many, NHL games total do you get from the draft? Is that your benchmark at all? Or how good are those players? Or how well do they develop? Were there any guys that were from lower rounds of the draft that became hits, right?
Right.
So it's like, how do you balance all of those things? And I think that, there's an argument to be made here just simply on impact alone for the Claude Giroux year. And, you can say the Flyers didn't have success here or with him as captain, but they did to some degree earlier in his career with the Flyers. I mean, they did make it to a Stanley Cup final and had a really good second playoff run there with him on the team. And he had such an impact on the organization. And I think that's why his year was in second place with 23%. But I think in 2006, but I think that maybe I expected it to be a little bit closer.
I didn't expect it to be closer. Now this is where I still would have taken the 2012 for my team because I got more players, more games, and I wouldn't have been Chuck Fletcher, and I would have kept Anthony Stolarz. I want to make that clear. That's, but beside that, yeah, the Giroux one. If Andres Nodal would have done anything, then I definitely would have answered that way. I thought he could do something. Like I remember watching him in the regionals in college. What was he, St. Cloud or something? And I was just like, yeah, he's pretty good. He never got past pretty good.
Yeah. It was just so weird that like nobody else in that
I know.
draft did anything or like really had any chance. That's the thing that's so weird about it to me.
Yeah, the weird thing about it to me is like a player of Giroux's caliber rarely gets picked that low in the first round anymore. You still get some that I guess some people would say, well, he was a bit of a surprise, but like he had put up points. It's not like he was that much of a surprise, but I think it was the size factor that bopped him, that dropped him,
Yeah, and I think for me it's 2012 as well, because you even look at like Taylor Lear, who was a 4th round pick,
He was a
got
fringe
some in it.
player. Yep.
He was a fringe player. Reese Wilcox was really good on the
He was.
Phantoms
He was.
for a while. And so it's like even beyond, Lawton and Ghost, who's had a strong career, and
It helped the
Stolarz.
organization a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where like you look all the way down the draft. I think that draft, to your point, really just did help the organization grow. And I think that is ultimately what would do it for me in picking one of these, but
In truth,
it's
it's
fair
the
to pick
ultimate
any of them.
goal. It is, but in truth, it's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, because I think, you could say that about 2014 as
Yeah,
well, which only got 6% of the vote here. You look at that draft class and you have Travis Sanheim, who's making a huge impact with the Flyers right now. NAK, successful here to a degree, was borderline, but has made a career of being borderline in several places
sure.
and continues to play in the NHL. Mark Friedman just got another contract with the
Keeps
Canucks.
playing. Yep.
And Oscar Lindblom, like, who knows what might have been.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, we
and
can't judge it anymore. That one you put
right.
to bed.
But certainly a very good player. And to have over 300 NHL games played as a 5th round pick,
Excellent.
extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary.
By
And
the way,
I
I want to
do,
go back to this Claude Giroux point.
yeah,
3 years in Gatineau, over 100 points every year.
yeah,
So I remember it's, the fact that he's 5'11", and I also think they were a little worried about his skating, but skating didn't matter as much then. But I think that was the combination that dropped him, which is crazy to me.
yeah, yeah. All right, that was a really good poll for the week. Good discussion out of it and some interesting results as well. We'll have a new one for you on Monday and all the draft content you would love to hear. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got mailbag questions or draft questions, send them to us on Twitter at Locked On Flyers, email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, or comment over on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day.